Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and this time we're talking about The Legend of Zelda, Skyward Sword HD, and all of this new information we've been getting today. We got some trailers that include a girl with a Triforce on her hand, and another one with a dog, and then there are some trailers from Nintendo of Japan that have some incredible looking shots to make the game just look absolutely stunning and beautiful. And then there's this other trailer that everyone's sort of talking about right now that finally showcased a number of the quality of life improvements that are coming to Skyward Sword HD. So with that all in mind, the discussion has sparked up again. Is Skyward Sword HD worth it? Is it worth buying again if you played the game back in 2011? Is it worth $60? Well, that's what we're talking about today. Now before we jump into things, let me very quickly talk about my social media. You may see a few different things here on screen. You can check that all out. It is linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, you can subscribe. So before we jump into the debate of whether Skyward Sword HD is worth it, let's first talk about a number of the quality of life improvements that we're getting. Let's break it all down here. So the first one on the list I got here is optional help from Fi. So Fi is that blue-like character you see attached to your sword. This character offers you guidance and tips all throughout your game experience. She's one of the typical navigators we've seen in previous Zelda games. Now, if you're new to the Zelda series and the only new Zelda game you've played is Breath of the Wild, then you may not be too accustomed to this navigator. It's something from previous Zelda games, and it's something that a lot of fans have complained about over the years. Not every navigator is hated unanimously for all Zelda fans, but there have been some that have known to have been quite a bit annoying. For example, Navi from Ocarina of Time. You ever hear people joke around saying, hey, look out, watch, like, those are things that Navi would say incessantly, and some people found it infuriating. And Fi, the navigator for Skyward Sword, would also say a lot of things at times that a lot of fans didn't necessarily appreciate. Hey master, your batteries are low. Hey master, your batteries are low. Hey master, perhaps you should save. Hey master, there is a 26.2% chance that you will not get to this dungeon. Random things like that, perhaps when you would not want them to, at a degree and frequency that perhaps would take away from your experience of the game. And especially with things about taking a break or your batteries being low, those things would argue would take away from your immersion of the experience. Well, now it seems like that's entirely optional. Based off the footage we're seeing here, it's looking like you actually have to press a particular button to access Fi. Now I'm sure throughout the game with the major cutscenes, Fi will still be there, but for the most part, all of those neat little things she says throughout the game that you may or may not like, well, you can still see them, but you have to press a button to check and get them, which I think will make the experience far more seamless, far more faster. It will increase your immersion. You will no longer be distracted by this character that's making mention of things that are related to the outside world, like the health of your battery life. So I think that's something that is going to go a long ways towards improving the game. Continuing on though, they stress again that there are button controls now, which is definitely a really big improvement here, because beforehand on Skyward Sword, it was just purely motion. Now the game can be played with traditional controls, which I think is a very important deal. It now facilitates the game for being a mobile game, a portable game, so you can take this game with your Switch Lite or your base Switch and take it wherever you want and not have to waggle things around in a bus or a train or anywhere. You can play it comfortably with the normal controls. But you still have the motion controls if you want to play it in that way, and apparently those controls have been enhanced with the far improved hardware of the Joy-Cons compared to the Wii Motion Plus back in the day. And to further improve this experience, the game now runs at a much smoother, better frame rate, 60 frames per second. So this makes actually a big deal. With that improved frame rate, it will feel a lot smoother. It'll probably measure up to the actual hand movements of yourself with the controls and Link in the game, and things are just going to feel a lot more natural and organic with this improved frame rate. But also with this improved frame rate, the game is going to flow and look and run better. Looking at the footage so far, there's just something about it that just feels a little bit more real, a little bit more fluid, and a lot of that has to do with the frame rate. But since we're already talking on the visuals and such, yes, the game is looking a lot better than it used to. I'll be putting footage all throughout this video. There are some really good looking shots here. The game is looking pretty clean. I am really appreciating this. Back when Skyward Sword came out around 2011, there were a lot of people running it on Dolphin and showing how the game would look on a Wii HD, which never actually happened, and it looked pretty good. This, in some ways, I would say looks better. Now sure, this isn't a remake or a reimagining, this is still a remaster, they're still taking the base game, and it doesn't look like they've changed too many of the main elements of the game, but with the increased resolution and the cleaner textures and the improved frame rate, things are looking really, really good, and it wouldn't surprise me if there are a lot of smaller little touch-ups that they did that are improving the overall look of the game, because from what I'm seeing, it looks really nice. Continuing on with some of the other quality of life improvements here, there is the option to fast forward through dialogue, which does speed up the game, make it more of a seamless and fluid experience. But an even bigger thing that does that same thing to an even greater degree is streamlined data info. So in the previous version of the game, the initial release, every time you boot up the game, every item you would find, you would get a text blurb telling you what that item is and what it does. Even though you may have already acquired the item beforehand, it was repetitive, it was slow, it was annoying. Now, that is no longer the case, and that is great. Just the very first time you see it, and no more, that's how it should be. I would assume that somewhere in the game's menus, you can still see a description of the item, but you do not need to be reminded of that exact description every time you get it. So, it's great that that's finally in there. Something else that people have been talking about is that apparently there is an autosave feature now, an actual dedicated autosave file, which also will streamline the experience, make it smoother. You won't have to rely on just random save points, and that, I think, is awesome. Continuing with this train of thought, there is also skippable cutscenes, so if you've seen the cutscene before, if you don't want to watch it, you can also skip it. All of these things we've been discussing are all about streamlining the experience, making it smoother, making it more comfortable, making it faster, less irritating, less infuriating, thus making it a more fun, enjoyable game. And it's also worth noting that there will apparently be more quality of life improvements. The quality of life improvements we've discussed already are not all of them, there's simply a number of them. So there could be more. What those are, we don't know quite yet. But regardless, this is how Nintendo's pushing and marketing the game. With the information we have now, even though reviews haven't come out yet and we don't know all the full details, from what we know, is this game worth it? Well, the initial release, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, was a Zelda game. A 3D Zelda game that you could play with motion controls and swing around the sword in near one-to-one motion. It was a pretty cool, unique experience at the time. And it was also quite a long, epic adventure. You could put upwards of 60 to 70 hours in this game. So the initial release itself is already, I would say, a valuable piece of software. It's something that's definitely worth playing if you're a Zelda fan, absolutely. But if you've ever gone back to it, I would say the game hasn't aged as well as some other games. The beginning is kind of slow, there's a lot of tutorials and things of that nature, just kind of make it sort of cumbersome to get through, and there are things throughout the game that are annoying. As we sort of mentioned with all the quality of life improvements, they improved upon those things because they were annoying beforehand. Skyward Sword HD is improving upon all of those things, and it's going to make it a smoother experience, something that's going to perhaps be a lot easier to revisit. And if you're new to this series, well, the game will probably measure up a lot better now than it would have if you just played the original release. And the game does look amazing. The visuals stand out quite a bit, I would say, with the now HD textured look and all. And the 60 frames per second, I think it goes a long ways as well. Seeing this game in motion, seeing how it plays and looks, it just looks and runs a lot better than the initial game. And the option to play this game with traditional controls or enhanced motion controls, I'm actually very excited about. Another thing to point out here that we haven't really focused too much on is that now the game is portable. That's a big deal. The Switch effect of having a portable option here is something awesome. Now we can take an HD 60 frame per second Skyward Sword with traditional controls on the go. That's something that was the stuff of dreams back in 2011. So that's all really, really nice stuff. So then let's come down to the question. Is the game worth it? Well, that obviously is going to depend on each individual person. I do feel like it is worth noting, since we are having this debate, that there are other games out there that arguably, or not even arguably, objectively, have had more work done to them. So is Skyward Sword still worth its price tag? Let's take a look at Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. That's another game that is an enhancement of a Wii game. There's been the whole debate with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition if it's a remake or a remaster. Well, there's definitely a lot more work done for Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. There were a lot more changes to the visuals, there were also a number of quality of life improvements, and they added a whole new expansion area campaign. So far, in terms of new content, there really isn't anything there. We haven't heard anything about new dungeons or areas for Skyward Sword, and considering previous HD remasters for Legend of Zelda like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, that's not really something they do. They might add like a little bit of a challenge mode, but not like a whole other story or adventure with different actual brand new dungeons with original content there. That hasn't been done before. So when you look at it in that way, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is definitely a more valuable piece of software because it has already a very big, really good game that was longer than Skyward Sword, and they are adding even more visual enhancements to it than what they've done for Skyward Sword, and there's a whole other campaign to throw it on top of that. So yes, it seems like a more valuable product when you break it down like that. But just because one game had more work done to it, does that mean the other game isn't worth its price tag? No, I don't think that's the case either. I will tell you that I was more excited for Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition because of all the work done for it, but I am still interested in Skyward Sword because it's an amazing game, and these enhancements will make it a better experience, and it is the kind of game that I would definitely double dip on because it's that high quality of a game. There are some games that you just want again if you can afford it. Skyward Sword is one of them, and there isn't really a good modern way to do it, so now I'll have it on my Switch. It'll be portable, which is not something that should be underestimated here. So for those reasons, I think it's kind of worth it for me. It's still a really, really good game. It's certainly worth the price tag. A lot of games I think are worth the price tag. I'm really looking forward to this because the experience has been streamlined, it looks better, it runs better, and I'm gonna have it on my Switch, and I'm gonna be able to play it with traditional controls, but still try out the motions to see if it works. And that's exciting to me. I love Skyward Sword, so I'm gonna love another opportunity at this game. I personally can't wait, and it's absolutely worth it. But what do you guys think? Is Skyward Sword HD worth it? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.